All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of Ole Miss After Dark. I'm joined here today by Zach Moreth from the Rebel Walk and the Rebel Talk. If you have not checked out his and Dalen's podcast, it's fantastic. Him and Dalen obviously do a great job. You've seen them both here on this show and on several shows across the Ole Miss network. They're all over the place. They do an incredible job covering all sports for your Ole Miss Rebels. Zach, I appreciate you joining me again today, bud.
Yes, sir, Dids. I said it before, but it feels good, here to talk about baseball. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, that's right. And kind of like we were talking before, like usually we're in this mode to where we can't wait for baseball to get here because basketball just can't quite get us there, right?
Yep.
That's not the case this year. Now we've got a really good basketball team that's making waves on the men's side. Coach O's doing an incredible job. Just pulled off the big win against Kentucky. Shout out Coach O, number 8 team in the country on Monday night. Huge win for that program. So seems like everything's firing on all cylinders for Ole Miss athletics, and it's time for Coach Bianco, the Rebel baseball team, to follow suit.
That's what I'm saying, man. You mentioned it, but it's a hell of a time to be a student here. I'm truly grateful. But you got Mississippi State coming to town Saturday. You got Arizona, Texas, and Clemson for baseball. It's going to be a fun weekend, so I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah. Well, look, we'll go ahead and dive into it. Zach was there covering the media days for baseball here on Tuesday in Oxford. Kind of what were your impressions from Mike Bianco up there, his opening statement, all the things he was asked? Was there anything in particular that stood out to you?
Yeah, Dids, it's easy to say this every year, but I think the first word that comes to mind is optimism. You look at the past 2 seasons, it's pretty uncharacteristic what's been going on with Ole Miss. 2 really down years, a lot of losses to teams who they shouldn't have lost to, plain and simple. One of Mike's primary messages for the entire time was this team is different in the fact of the amount of veterans and the leadership presence that really hasn't been there the past couple of years. He mentioned it, but if you look at the pitching staff, according to Mike, he doesn't think he's had this amount of veteran presence on a pitching staff since 2021, with those guys way back then, quite a few years ago. So now you look at Hunter Elliott, Riley Maddox, and Mason Nichols, who are taking the bump in this first tournament in Arlington, and it's a big difference. And then you look at the field, obviously the outfielders are a bunch of transfer guys, but 3 guys who've played a lot of college baseball. And then essentially everyone else in all the other position places are veteran guys, Dids. And this is what the team has been missing. It was filled with a lot of transfers, a lot of freshmen last year. Obviously, Owen Pano is holding down the shortstop spot, but he's an elite level player. And then the other thing I want to touch on from what I got from Bianco was he really has a lot of faith in Joel Mangrum. And we've been hyping him up. Joel is one of the best pitching coaches in baseball right now. He has experience in college. He has experience in the minor leagues, the major leagues, you name it, he's done it. And Mike told us, look, I'm not calling pitches at all. And he went for a step further and said, I'm going to try and leave my hands off the pitchers as much as possible, basically alluding to the fact that this is Joel's show now, and I'm going to stay away from it as much as possible, which I enjoy. And I appreciate him saying that, because now if there's a problem with the pitching, we can't all blame this on Mike like we've been doing the past couple of years. Joel's going to have to take that responsibility. And at the same time, when the pitching is elite, like it should be for a majority of the year, we can go and thank Joel for that. So that was probably my biggest takeaway. But like I said at the beginning, the biggest word that comes to mind here is optimism. And we're going to find out, pretty quickly here if this Ole Miss team has the talent to compete with top 10 programs across the country.
Yeah, so I'm going to touch on a couple things you just said there. First of all, yeah, you're not blaming Bianco for pitching this year, guys, okay? I've been taking up for him. I've taken the bullets. I've covered the body. It's not going to be on him this time, okay? This is going to be Joel Mangrum show, and that's fantastic. From all accounts, it sounds like the players love him, the coaches love him. Done an incredible job with the guys that have returned, as well as the guys that have come in as well. Everybody that I've talked to, everything I've read, people really, really love him, and the program that he has set in place for these pitchers and these arms. But yeah, I noticed that as well. He said that Mangrum was going to be calling pitches. He stayed away from the pitching staff. And that was one of the takeaways that I got from it. Was he talked about how Laugh was able to work with the catchers a lot more because he's not over with the pitching side, along with Bianco. Bianco was a really good catcher, guys. Okay, I don't know if you know it or not. I mean, surely you do if you watch any ESPN broadcast with Ben McDonald on the microphone because he tells you every time, and rightfully so. Mike Bianco was an incredible catcher in college. He knows what he's talking about. Uh, I think that kind of helps play into the part of Campbell Smithwick developing. I know he had a really good summer up in the Cape. All reports coming back was that his receiving really improved. Look, he always had an elite bat. He always had an elite arm. It was receiving the ball. If he fixes that, you're talking about one of the best catchers in the country. That may be where we see the biggest difference with this coaching staff shift with Bianco, Laugh, those guys actually being able to work on that side of the ball instead of them being focused on the pitching side.
You make a great point, Dids. And Campbell he has the potential to be an elite middle of the bat guy who can ultimately piece together, the top of the order into that middle section, which has struggled. It's really struggled the past couple of years with Ole Miss. And he told us in the interview, we had a one-on-one with him today. He's been working on receiving with down on one knee rather than up on both, which is something that is typically uncharacteristic. If you look at Ole Miss catchers, they're usually up and they're blocking. When they go to block, they go down on two knees. They're not really relaxed in the one knee position. But this is very similar to what's going on with the pitching situation. Campbell told us, he's like, look, this is a new era of catching. I worked with a lot of catching coaches, and they all told me to drop down to one knee. I receive better and I block better with it. He said Coach Bianco hasn't liked that in the past. But look, this is what guys are doing now, and it's working. Campbell also informed us that the backup catchers, Austin Foley and Colin Reuter, catch the exact same way. So even if it's a different look, if it works for them, if it's comfortable for them, they're surely going to do it. So between that, getting more experience and not being a freshman, I think Smithwick is really going to develop and blossom into the player who we all believe he should be. And like you said, his bat is elite. The guy gets on base. He usually works good at bats, and when he makes contact, he rips the hell out of the ball. So you hope to see that 1 to 2 year step for Smithwick that we're all expecting. But I'm excited, man, especially for him. I can't even imagine what last year was like. The last thing I'll touch on with Campbell is, he told us he'd never really experienced any challenges in baseball. His whole career, from middle school, high school, he's always the best player on the field. And now you go to the SEC, you get smacked in the mouth. He's learned a lot. So I would expect a big jump from Campbell. I don't want to hype him up too much or put any pressure on him, but you'd expect a good improvement there for sure.
Yeah, that's the thing about this league. It doesn't matter how good you are, how talented you are. When you get into this league, no matter where you were at before, there's going to be an adjustment made, right? Because these are the best players in the country, basically from top to bottom in the SEC. There's a reason we've dominated Omaha for the past, basically 6-7 years, right? There's always multiple SEC teams, and usually about four. It's not a it's not odd to have half of the Omaha field being from the SEC. There's a reason from that. This is a really good conference. The jump from the freshman year to the sophomore year, we see it all the time. That's usually where you start making some improvement. I think Campbell's going to be good this year. I think he's going to make improvement, especially with that added one-on-one time that he gets with all of these catchers on staff, because outside of Mangrum, the other three coaches were all catchers in college. That's kind of why we have become Catcher U in the SEC, and why last year was so hard to stomach, because we got completely spoiled over the previous 24 years and had never seen anything like it. All these other teams, they've had catchers like that couldn't receive the ball. We had never seen it before. We had over 2 decades of, you may not hit, but by God, you're going to catch the ball. You're going to receive. You're going to handle a pitching staff. That was kind of us getting spoiled a little bit and seeing the freshman have his struggles. But again, I think Campbell's going to be fine. All indications are that he's really improved there, and we know what he can do with the bat, and we know the arm's elite too. So really excited to see him. One of the other interesting things that I took away from Mike's press conference on Tuesday, he said he had a Zoom meeting with a major league manager, and I thought it was interesting because now Mike, for the first time in his career, is in an actual managerial role, how to handle a team, not just the pitching staff, not just the hitters. He's looking at everybody now. So he had a Zoom call with a manager in the major leagues, and they just bounced ideas off of each other. How do I handle this? How do I handle that? because this is going to be completely different than anything that Mike's ever done in his career as well.
And I don't, this is not a disrespectful take at Mike Bianco. He's an all-time legendary college coach, but it feels like he's finally put his ego to the side and reflected a little bit in the mirror and said, look, Ole Miss baseball has not been good the past 2 years. Something has got to change. And it started with hiring a new pitching coach. And now he's talking to major league guys. I mean, would you ever guess that the guy who won the College World Series is going out asking for advice from major league coaches? Probably not, but here we are. And I think that's incredible. It shows you that Mike simply wants to win, and he feels it. Ole Miss fans feel it. But this is a big season for him, and he understands that. So it's good to hear that he's open to hearing new perspectives. And, I really think it's going to pay off, Dids. I think this is going to be a much better year for Ole Miss. But like I said, man, it's this Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. You're going to learn a lot about the team. So I'm excited.
Yeah, it's an adapt or die sport, right? And it's not just college baseball; it's across all college sports. It's going to constantly evolve, and you have to change with it. I go back to Nick Saban begrudgingly hiring Lane Kiffin to run his offense back when he found out that his ground and pound was just going to, basically get winded and tired right off the field. After he played Hugh Freeze there for a couple of years at Ole Miss, he was like, all right, we got to make a change. We can't do this anymore. We've got to go to a more up-tempo offense. Brings in Lane Kiffin, completely changes the offense in that program. And you kind of, it kind of feels like that kind of thing here with Mike Bianco and this Ole Miss baseball program too. So it's going to be really exciting to see. Last thing on Mike, one thing I love to hear is the same thing I say every single year. I catch hell for it every single year. Expectations have not changed in Oxford, Mississippi. You win 40 games. You try to win the SEC, host a regional, host a super regional, go to Omaha, win a national title. He said it again this year, guys. That's the expectation. You can agree or disagree whether or not we can do it, but that's what everybody in that building is trying to do, is to host regionals, win national titles, okay? So this year is no different. I don't care about the previous 2 years, so glad to hear that mindset as well. Let's jump over to the pitching side real quick, though. We've got a lot of veterans on the mound. He announced the starting rotation. Obviously, you get Hunter Elliott on Friday, Riley Maddox on Saturday, Mason Nichols on Sunday. I'm going to throw a theory at you here in just a little bit after we talk about those three for a second, because I think for Ole Miss to be the best version of itself, I think Mason Nichols needs to be in the bullpen playing the high leverage role, but you have to have somebody to take over his role to begin with. But when you look at these three guys, these are three guys that, are all national champions. They were all on that 2022 team. I know Riley Maddox tore up his elbow, wasn't available for the latter part of that year in that Omaha run due to Tommy John surgery. But if you remember back when he was a freshman, he was the most highly touted, not only coming out, but also when he got into games and you saw him pitch, you thought, oh, this is the next guy at Ole Miss, was Riley Maddox. He has Tommy John surgery. Hunter Elliott takes over, obviously goes on, wins the national championship with some huge innings from Mason Nichols out of the bullpen along that run, right, especially there in Omaha. And then obviously Hunter goes down. He's going through the same thing Maddox went through, and Nichols gets pushed into the starting rotation last year. I thought he was incredible in that Sunday role for us, being the first time he had really started. I think he's only going to improve. I think he can really do well in that role. But the big part here, I think Ole Miss has three veterans that have not only played in the SEC, started in the SEC, but also know what it takes to win a national championship. And Hunter Elliott can kind of bounce stuff off of Riley Maddox a little bit about what it's like coming back from Tommy John surgery and competing in this league. I just feel like it's a really good mixture with those three guys there.
They've done such a good job here, Dids. And I want to take you back to the summer. Ole Miss baseball loses Wes Mendez, JT Quinn, Liam Doyle. I'm sure I'm missing some marquee pitchers.
Grayson Saunier.
Yep, there it is.
Yep.
And now you look at this rotation, you're like, how the hell did they assemble this, man? Like, it's pretty damn good. It's pretty damn good going in the first weekend. We talked to Hunter. We talked to Riley today. Both are ecstatic, ready to get back to work, especially Hunter. He was telling us how he was used to playing ping pong because that's the only thing he could do. and that's how he was getting his competitive energy out. So for him to be back on the mound is exciting for him. Obviously, very, very, very exciting for Ole Miss fans after watching him and what he did in Omaha. But, another thing I want to touch on is what Coach Mangrum has done with these guys. Riley Maddox said he added 1 to 2 miles an hour to his fastball, said he may have added another pitch. And then Maddox also went in to talk about Mason Nichols and said he also added velocity and potentially 2 other pitches. So, you look at the combination of the different pitches and the different arm slots that these guys all throw from. Obviously, Hunter Elliott being a lefty, I think it's a really nice mixture. We talked about Nichols probably not staying in this role and potentially becoming a high leverage guy out of the bullpen. But to start the opening weekend, I think this is perfect. And then out of the bullpen, there's a lot of arms there, Dids, and one of the guys, like quite a few. And one of the guys Bianco touched on was Connor Spencer. Well, this guy's a dog. He's an absolute dog. Him running out last year, he wasn't great. I don't want to say he was great, but he usually was very productive out there. And at the same time, he didn't really have much of an offense to work with. He's coming into games that Ole Miss is maybe down 1 or 2 runs, and he's just trying to hold that lead. And I thought he did an okay job under Coach Mangrum, and hopefully an offense that can generate more runs. I think he's going to take that next step and ultimately reach some scouts and some names for next year's MLB draft. But look, between the veterans and the volume of guys coming out of this bullpen and starting in this rotation, I ultimately think it's going to bring Ole Miss a lot of wins. I think pitching is going to be what's better than the offense. I think pitching is going to be what you can rely on from this team. With Coach Mangrum calling pitches, we said it, but there's no more blaming Mike Bianco. This is fully on the staff. And Hunter said it today, man, and Riley did too. Joe Mangrum has brought, this is a quote from Riley Maddox, he has brought professional baseball to Ole Miss pitching. So this is it, man. You got your guns, you got a lot of guys, and we're going to see what happens.
Yeah, touching on Connor Spencer, him being back into that bullpen is huge for us, right? And I heard people last year, and I defended him like I defended Mike Bianco. I mean, I covered him up. I took the bullets for him. We were in so many games where we didn't need Connor Spencer that the days added up so much that we had to throw him in there anyway. And Mike Bianco talked about that today at his press conference. And I talked about it a lot last year. When we got down to a safe situation or a high leverage situation where we had to get outs and we went to Connor Spencer, he showed up. It's a mentality thing with these closers, right? It's just completely different coming in with a 7-run lead in the 9th inning and a 1-run or a 2-run lead in the 9th inning, or coming in the 8th trying to protect a 1-run lead, or you're down 1 trying to keep a guy from second to score. You still have that same mentality that I've got to get this guy. When he's locked into that zone, he's absolutely dynamic. He's as electric as we have on that staff. And I think he'll have more opportunities because, like you said, I think the pitching is going to be the strength of this team. Yeah. All of these veterans, all of these guys coming back, and then you've got guys like J.P. Robertson, the JUCO transfer, Will McCausland transferring in as well. Some really good freshmen as well with hooks. And look, you've got Braden Jones, who's apparently throwing 97 all of a sudden, right? So that makes me feel better about not having Nichols there, at least initially. Maybe he gets moved out of that role at some point, but you get Braden Jones there at the back end of that bullpen that could be that high leverage guy with added velocity. Sam Takuyan, Mason Morris, Hudson Calhoun that had this incredible summer, and it really seems to improve. He's up into the mid-90s now. Added a sweeper as well to his arsenal. We've got guys that can go in there and can get outs to get us to Connor Spencer, to where there's not so much pressure on this offense. Ryan Rodriguez, another guy that, has pitched in the SEC for a couple of years already. You get that lefty coming out. Just a plethora of arms, hopefully an embarrassment of riches. That's what you hope it ends up being by the time it's all said and done out of that bullpen. And look, if they can handle that, then this starting rotation is perfectly fine, because I do think it's probably the best 3 Friday through Sunday. My only argument would be getting Nichols back in that pen for that high leverage guy to have this out role. if somebody could take over Sunday. I thought Hudson Calhoun might be that guy, Will McCausland. But again, you're going to see changes. There's going to be shakeups as the year goes on. What you see in the first weekend is not going to be what you see throughout the rest of the year, which brings me to the hitters here. He set out a lineup, a vague one, but at least a lineup at some point, right? You get Smith, wicket catcher, Furness at first, Randall at second, Owen Pano, the freshman, at short, Luke Hill and Udermark at third. It was an or situation. That was our first or on the depth chart, right? And then you get a plethora of transfers in the outfield with Humphrey, Sanford, and Mormon from Illinois. Really impressed with that outfield, what they were able to do. Had to replace all three players out there from last year. They went out there, and not only did they get really good players, they got really good players that have performed at the Power 4 level and have experience. I know Sanford came from New Orleans, like you mentioned, but he has experience at LSU, battled injuries there, and UT Arlington before getting to New Orleans, and then just had an unbelievable season. You know what Humphreys can do. He's done his entire career as a 300 hitter, hit 10 bombs last year, and then Mormon is this big right-handed bat, which I feel like we really needed in this lineup, a right-handed power presence to go along with Udemark, to go along with Hill, because we have so many lefties in there, right? And this guy's 19 bombs last year at Illinois, 12 the year before that. There's going to be some swing and miss there. You're going to have to deal with it. But overall, a very athletic outfield, a very good defensive outfield, and one that should be productive at the plate as well.
And that's a huge thing for me, Dids, is finding run production from the bottom of the lineup, which I've said it probably 5 times in this podcast, but Ole Miss hasn't had that in the past couple of years. So if you get a guy like the Illinois transfer, he's going to strike out here and there, probably a little more than people would like. But in a late game situation, when the bottom of the order's up and Ole Miss is down 2 runs and we feel like we have nothing going, he's your guy who can smoke one 400 feet to left field. So his bat, there's going to be times when we're frustrated with it, but I think it's going to be crucial to the run production of this lineup. But you mentioned the lefties in the top of this order. Mitch Sanford, I hear incredible things, and you talked about it. He has LSU experience. Guy goes to New Orleans. He hits 450, which is great, but we do need to see how that translates into this Power 4 type, conference. You look at Trace and Hughes from last year. It really didn't translate, unfortunately. Isaac Humphreys, a guy huge on. I think he hits in the 2 or 3 slot the entire year. He's a consistent bat, good leader, defensively sound. If he stays healthy, I think he's going to be an incredible MLB draft pick. Eventually, Owen Pano, man, exciting.
I'm telling you, man, it's going to be fun to see him.
Yeah, he went as far today he said, I'm not going to compare him, but he draws similarities to Jacob Gonzalez. That's what Coach said. And Pano, you hope he can remain at a steady pulse and not let all these expectations get to him, because he's an incredible player. And quite honestly, he should be in an MLB organization right now. And then Will Furness, we talked to Will today. First things first, he's moving to number 36, just like his dad. So hopefully that brings him some special power at the plate. That's pretty cool. But he also said, he worked with driveline baseball in Arizona, and he had the best fall of his career. He said he hit over 300 here, which has never happened before in the fall practices that Ole Miss has had. And he's also developed not only on the field, but off the field as a leader. Him and Luke Hill did a great job recruiting a lot of the transfers and retaining a whole lot of this talent as well. And then Braden Randall, to me, kind of a question mark, Dids. He can be interchangeable with you could put Luke Hill at second, put Judd Udermark at third. Luke Chang, the Illinois State transfer, could play in middle infield. But I'm curious to see what Braden is capable of. He hit a home run in the inter squad on Friday. And if Braden Randall, a smaller guy who's at second base, can produce a home run here or there and hit close to that 300 range, there's no reason why he can't stay in the lineup. But up and down, there's going to be guys who are going to be subbed in. To me, you got to play the hot bat and you got to produce runs, because with this pitching staff, if the offense isn't going, you're going to struggle. If the offense is moving and things are being produced at a steady rate, which hasn't happened in quite a few years here, Ole Miss is going to be just fine. But you got to find the guys who are going to be able to do that. But I do like the set 9 that Bianco announced today. There's no doubt.
Yeah. Look, you're going to see movement, kind of like you mentioned, Zach. With him listing Luke Hill and Judd Utermark both at third base. I've got news for all you Ole Miss fans out there. Chill the hell out. Luke Hill and Judd Utermark are going to get at bats. They're going to play. It's not an
Yes.
either or situation over there, right? Luke Hill can move to second. Chang, that was another interesting name that you brought up, right? And then Utermark can move to first. He can move to outfield. They had Reuter and Federico listed at DH. He can move. Utermark can move to first, Furnace DH, vice versa, whatever. Even though I said this on Lock on Ole Miss with Stephen Willis on Monday, I was so impressed with Furnace last year when he got inserted at first base with his glove. I was
Yeah.
really impressed with the way he was able to handle it because you always thought of him as just this bopper, right? A guy to go up there and swing the bat. I thought he really anchored first base for us, so I'm excited to see him over there at first base to start the year. But talking about Braden Randall, that's another guy that I personally really like because I know he's smaller in stature, but I love the way he plays the game. First of all, I think he is an absolute stud up the middle at second base. And when you have Hunter Elliott and uh, Riley Maddox on the mound, those guys, yeah, they're going to get their strikeouts, but they're really trying to pitch to contact. They're trying to keep those pitch counts down. We need somebody to field the ball at the middle. I thought he did a really good job as a true freshman last year there at second base when he played there before he moved over to shortstop and obviously went back to second base again. And a contact hitter. It's a guy that you're not going to ask a lot of. You're not going to ask him to hit second or lead off. You can throw him down there in the 7 through 9 area, something like that. And as long as he can make contact, hitting lefties is going to be the key for him. He really struggled. Again, true freshman in the SEC. It's going to happen. But those are the numbers that have to come up if he's going to be an everyday player. And I think they will because I think the profile suggests that he can do that because of how good of a contact hitter he is. He can get the bat to the ball there. So another year under his belt. I think you're going to see significant improvement there. Mormon, talking about him again, like you said, this is a guy that, yes, he's going to strike out, but I haven't gone back and looked at a single Illinois box score. Okay, Zach, I'm hand up. I haven't done it yet. All right. I guarantee you he hit third or fourth at Illinois for the past 3 years. We're not going to ask him to do that, not from Mississippi. He's going to be bottom third of the lineup. And like you said, his value is you can put him down there. The strikeouts won't kill you down there, but the power potential when you're down 2 runs in the 8th inning, you're in the bottom of the lineup. This is a guy that can lift one, get it out of the ballpark, cut that lead in half, possibly tie, whatever it is.
Exactly.
Or if he's not in the lineup at that point and you've got Utermark in the outfield or whoever it is, that's a huge right-handed power bat you can bring off the bench if they try to play matchups with, Furnace or Smithwick or any of our lefties that we have. Humphreys being another one, right? If they try, or even Randall for that matter, if they try to play matchups, then you've got a big right-handed bat you can bring in against a lefty off the bench if he so happens not to be playing that day. I think he's going to be a really good player, very valuable player. It just may not be one of those things where he comes out and hits 350 with 20 bombs and, in continuous for player of the year. We're not going to ask him to do those kinds of things. It's a completely different role here in Oxford than what he was dealing with in Illinois. So really excited, though. I think they've really done a good job putting this team together, both at the plate, on the mound, and the coaching staff. They've done it at all 3 levels here. And the good news is we get to find out quick. They get started on Friday night Friday afternoon, 3:00 Central, first pitch, if I'm not mistaken, against Arizona. Texas Saturday night, and then finish it out with Clemson on Sunday, 3 top 25 teams. So we get to see what these Rebels are about here very soon. Zach, I appreciate you joining me here again today, buddy, and we will talk here soon.
Always a pleasure, Dids. Let's go prove some guys wrong and hope Ole Miss goes 2-1, 3-0 this weekend, man. Yeah.
Let's just go ahead and reel this thing back to 2020. Without the whole COVID thing, but let's just go take 3 in Arlington and get out of there.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. All right, bud. I appreciate it. We'll holler at you later.